members of the public to join us in person tonight. Our meetings do remain open to the public via the live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to those who are watching. So on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members, elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I'd also like to make note of the very unfortunate circumstances that we are all in at the moment due to COVID. Thank you to all members of the public who have been wearing their masks and following the DHHS guidelines. It's obviously a really tricky time at the moment. I'd also like to pass on our sincere condolences to the family members of anyone who has been infected with COVID, and particularly those who have lost their lives. It's a really challenging time at the moment, and we're feeling it here in Moonee Valley. We currently have approximately 218 active cases, and it's obviously a really difficult time. So please, if anyone needs help with it at the moment, there's support available, so don't be afraid to reach out. Mental health is also critically important when we're in the middle of a pandemic. Now, councillors, I don't have any apologies or leaves of absence, so we'll move on to the agenda with the confirmation of minutes. Can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 14th of July be confirmed?
So moved.
Moved Councillor Sarace, seconded Councillor Lawrence. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Sharp, is your hand up? Apologies. And I don't have Councillor Sypek on my screen. Oh, thanks, Councillor Sypek. There we are. Okay, that is unanimous. The joys of Zoom meetings, everyone. We're all getting there. Okay, councillors, would anyone like to, does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? No. And councillors, do we have any presentations tonight? No. And petitions and joint letters? Also a no. Now, public question time. We have come to public question time and we have received questions from 2 members of the community for tonight's meeting. Thank you very much for submitting them. As we do not have residents in the public gallery, I propose that we move to suspend the provisions in our meeting procedure protocol, which requires questioners to be present in the gallery. This will enable me to read the questions that have been submitted in advance and to ask CEO Brian Lancaster to read the responses. Councillor, can I please have a mover that Council resolves to suspend the public question provisions in its meeting procedure protocol to allow questions from the gallery to be read by the Mayor and answered by the CEO for this meeting? Move Councillor Gauchimarici, seconded Councillor Sarace. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Okay, so tonight's first question is from Alison Fonseca. I hope I've pronounced that right, Alison. So Alison's first question reads, what was the total cost of the Afton Street footbridge upgrade? How much of that will come from ratepayers? I think the new bridge is tremendous. It used to frighten me when cyclists or little kids inadvertently rattled the entire bridge when rapidly crossing it. I no longer feel scared for my life. And I will pass on to CEO Brian Lancaster for a response.
Thank you, Mayor. The Afton Street Bridge upgrade cost approximately $908,000 to complete, with 50% of the cost being contributed to Maribyrnong City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster, and thank you, Alison, for the question. I know there's lots of Aberfeldy locals that are using that as their daily exercise at the moment. Now, the next 2 questions are from Anna Lanigan. Thank you, Anna, for your questions. Anna's first question reads, Development Victoria has made it clear that following the sale of the former sales office site at Valley Lake, Keilor East, jurisdiction of the estate will be passed over to Moonee Valley City Council. I have witnessed and documented to BirdLife Australia the miserable decline of lake habitat over the years of housing construction within the estate. What measures does Council plan to take to activate cleanup operations by Development Victoria prior to MVCC takeover to protect ratepayers from being left with a significant habitat restoration bill? Thank you, Anna, for your question, and I will pass to Brian Lancaster for a response.
Thank you, Mayor. It's Council's understanding that Development Victoria has commenced its commitment to the lake habitat restoration works. Our open space and development engineering teams are monitoring progress of this work. I wrote to the CEO of Development Victoria last week to reiterate Council's hopes that Development Victoria disposal of Valley Lake Sales Office will result in a community benefit, and also to reinforce the importance of restoring the lake habitat, requesting information regarding the restoration work timeframe. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Anna's second question reads, the City of Moonee Valley prides itself in adopting the MV 2040 strategy, a concept where residents can reach community facilities within a 20-minute walk from their homes. The excessive greed of developers at the Valley Lake Estate, Keilor East, has seen lakeside open space reduced to a couple of postage stamps, lakeside and clifftop boardwalks in disrepair and closed off for years. No cafe, shop or community hub of any description. Nothing whatsoever. The likelihood of the sales office site becoming even more units is the last straw. What measures will Moonee Valley City Council take to ensure the residents of Valley Lake are not left behind in MV 2040 initiative? Thank you, Anna, for your second question, and I will pass to CEO Brian Lancaster for a response.
Thank you, Mayor. Moonee Valley is made up of 13 neighbourhoods, which will be planned so that people can access most of their everyday needs within a 20-minute walk, cycle or local public transport trip of their home. Our neighbourhoods are anchored by a network of community facilities and public spaces which offer opportunities for multi-users. Centreway Shopping Centre and East Keilor Leisure Centre have been identified as anchors for Keilor East neighbourhood. The anchors will be a key focus for Council's neighbourhood planning approach. Neighbourhood plans will be developed for each neighbourhood to ensure the most appropriate land use and development controls are in place to deliver on our vision for a healthy city. Work has begun on neighbourhood plan for Keilor East, and we expect to have a draft ready for community consultation in the first half of 2021. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Now, item 9 on the agenda is reports from special committees, and as we don't have any, we will move straight to the reports. And report 10.1 on the agenda is the Flemington Community Hub concept design. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Yes, I'll move that Council resolves to A, publicly display the proposed concept design of the Flemington Community Hub, to inform the community for a period of 2 weeks in August 2020, and B, note that attachment B to the officer report shows the proposed floor plan.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack. Thank you. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on the motion?
So at the last council meeting, we endorsed the location of the hub, and this meeting, what we're being asked to endorse is the proposed concept design for exhibition. The concept design comes out of what was very extensive consultation with the community that was done by council over the past probably 18 or so months. I've lost track of time at the moment. And what it does is it reflects the feedback that we've received then, and also reflects the budgetary and other constraints that we have in relation to the project. If you look at the floor plan, and I really encourage everyone to have a look at the design and what's been proposed. What we've got at the ground floor are sports change facilities and storage spaces, a kiosk, consulting rooms, community meeting rooms, a prayer room, recreational hall and children's and family room. And then we've got a wonderful foyer where there'll be seating and also display areas for art exhibitions and installations with a cafe and working space. As we head to the first floor, we've got activity and classrooms. We've got a creative room, which is designed to facilitate art, a community lounge, a commercial kitchen, and then community halls, which can be separated into smaller spaces or larger spaces as needs be. And they can be used for a whole range of things, including meetings, functions, performances. And then what we've got is a wonderful roof terrace with opportunities for food growing and recreation. And you can see too that on the design, we've also got balcony spaces, which will just be absolutely magnificent, designed to provide the opportunity for fresh air and also to enjoy the beautiful view and watch what's happening around Flemington. For me, what I love about the proposed design is that the spaces are designed to be adaptable and also multi-purpose. And that's something that we're trying to have with all of our buildings now. That flexibility is incredibly important to meet changing needs as communities change and demand changes. So there'll certainly be opportunity for closed door activities, so your traditional meeting room, but there'll also be lots of opportunities for informal meetings and lounging, which is also really incredibly important. There's, as I mentioned too, that opportunity to use these various spaces for a wide range of activities. And that is one of the things that really excites me about the design. And with the spotlight that's been on Flemington, we know how important providing a space like this will be for our community. And you can certainly, I was thinking about it myself, I can picture popping in on a Saturday morning and just feeling that real buzz of activity, that hive of activity that will be created. People being exposed to different opportunities, meeting different people. You can imagine doing an art class and then spending some time on the rooftop terrace, having a community meeting, hanging out, reading a book in the lounge area, and then sitting downstairs, grabbing a coffee, watching some local sport before you head back upstairs for a local dance or theatre performance. So there will just be so many potential opportunities provided by what's been proposed. I won't go into every detail because I'd love to talk about the environment and sustainability outcomes and the connectivity between inside and outside, but I do want to leave something for Councillors Nation and Cusack to talk about also. This exhibition process will obviously be different to other ones just because of the restrictions associated with COVID-19, but there'll be lots of information on our website, and we're going to have a dedicated web page for the project, and you can also sign up for updates on the project too. So if you're interested, please make sure you do that. If you've got any queries, and this information will all be on our website, but please, you can email flemingtonhub@mvcc.vic.gov.au. And if you email that address, then you'll be able to get a response back to your queries. So I really look forward to hearing what people have got to say about the proposed design. I think it's a pretty amazing job that our team and architect have done in coming up with this incredible design that really just will facilitate so many different uses, and yeah, it's really very exciting.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack.
I think Councillor Marshall did pinch most of the space, but I'd just like to, in endorsing the motion, draw the community's attention to the fact that while there is a floor plan that is in a 2D version, there is also a video, and that will be able to be shown, and people will be able to pick up on that and actually fly through the whole space and get an idea of the extent to which this building will not just work for now, but has a very much a future-oriented aspect to it, so that we're building for a changing Flemington, not a static Flemington, and that we're building also for a community that is on the estate that will undergo change, but also all around it as that undergoes change, whether it's through the schools or in the housing stock that people have, etc. But most of all, the whole point of this building is that it's a people space. Many buildings are designed with hardly the person in mind, and this is quite the opposite. So the notion of it being open on both sides, to having the green space, to being sustainable, to being a building that is both provides active opportunities, learning opportunities, creative opportunities, meeting places, quiet places, and learn to work places, and promoting small business opportunities is an extraordinary challenge that's been met by the design of this building. And while it might not be absolutely perfect, and I'm happy enough for everybody to have a say, that's the whole point of the going out. But at the end of the day, it's also got to be, we've also got to be mindful that there has been a long period of consultation and listening to community over many moons over this one. So I suppose in closing, I'd just like to suggest that the 2 weeks that we're proposing is a substantial amount of time that people can make comments, and that people are the council officers as well as councillors are most open to receiving advice and information and so on like that during this period and having conversations about it. But it's a very exciting process, and I think now that people will see it all coming together, it should be applauded, and we're full of expectation.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Other Moonee Ward councillor, Councillor Nation?
Thank you, Mayor, and obviously I will speak in support of this motion, and definitely once community members get the chance to have a look at that 3D flyover that Councillor Cusack was mentioning and speaking about, it will give you a really good idea about how this facility will service the entire community, and that's what makes this facility so special and so important, because a lot of the time council builds pavilions or facilities with one or two general purposes, usually sporting purposes. You have a look at the range of uses for this facility, and Councillor Marshall ran through everything from, you know, a potential theatre space to the commercial kitchen, prayer room, classrooms, the adaptable change rooms to be used for the sporting area. It is a really exciting proposal, and I think that this floor plan caters for the majority of uses. Obviously, the consultation period is there for community members to advise us of any other suggestions, but a great deal of work has been put into this floor plan. We know that obviously there's been quite extensive consultation, and most excitingly, this is going to be a council-owned, a council-run and managed facility for our entire community. So I'd really ask fellow councillors to help support this motion. If it does get up, then community members can go to mvcc.vic.gov.au /Flemington, and there you'll be able to access the flyover, the 2D plans. We've got them translated in 8 different languages, some of the main languages spoken down there on the estate, because we want this to be a real community-led and community-run facility. So very exciting, and hopefully, councillors, you will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No? As there was no opposition, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. So item 10.2 is MB 2040 Action Plan Green. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Yes, I'll move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with some amendments. So A, B, C are the same. D is the same other than the insertion of the words as soon as practicable, but in any event, and that's after the words for consideration. E and F are the same. G reads, establish a dedicated web page on Council's website to track Council's progress against actions, targets and outcomes in all MB 2040 action plans when all plans are endorsed. H reads, ask the CEO to determine an interim canopy cover target to support delivery of Council's endorsed target of 30% canopy cover by 2040 to be presented to Council for consideration as soon as practicable, but in any event before the next annual review of the MV 2040 Action Plan Green. And I request that the report in relation to this matter be amended to remove the words in brackets of which 256 or 14% of the signatures were from Moonee Valley residents, noting the limitations of online petitions may make it difficult to capture residential postcodes of signatories.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on the motion?
So we are finally here. We're being asked tonight to endorse the Green Action Plan. And we actually had a decent amount of feedback, which was fantastic, because sometimes we put our plans and various things out to consultation and don't get much feedback. So it always really pleases me where we do. So we had the whole range of written feedback, and in addition to the petition we received. And overall, as the officer's report indicates, the feedback was positive. So I really do thank you to everyone who took the time to actually respond. Now, there's a summary of the consultation, which is included as an attachment to the report. And that's a really great read too, because what it does for the various issues that were raised through the consultation process, it actually addresses those. And you can see that it provides information about a range of things that we're doing, that we're proposing to do, or the reasons why we might not be able to do something. So I'd encourage anyone who might have some questions to have a look through that. The themes are set out in 3.53 of the report in relation to the issues that came up during the consultation process, and I'll just briefly touch on those. There were requests for council to transition away from gas, more requests for greening, a request for council to support the uptake of solar panels, questions and queries around sustainable transport, and having council shift away from fossil fuel related investments. And parts of the feedback have been incorporated into the plan, and some will also be captured by other plans. And again, this is all set out in the consultation report. In the relation to the issue of interim community emissions reductions targets, that was a subject of the petition and also some of the submissions too. It's something that I'm very supportive of, but I acknowledge the comments of the officer's report, and the easiest thing in the world to do would just be to pick a random target now, just to have that that feel-good moment of having a target. But it's incredibly important that we make sure any target has rigor and it's science-based, evidence-based, rather than being numbers that are essentially best guesses about things. So I'd note and support the suggestion of gathering all the data and coming back to council with something that is evidence-based. Also requested in the motion to doing the same thing in relation to our tree canopy cover, that whole sense of having interim targets, because it's really very important that people can see how we're tracking and that council can see how we're tracking, and that there's some visibility around that. And you certainly wouldn't want a situation where you become significantly off target without it being known that that's the case and what you're going to do to address that. And that's one of the other reasons why you'll see the request to have a web page which is dedicated to showing what we're doing, how we're tracking with the various actions and with our targets and objectives. Because it's, as we know, one thing to have these various action plans, but the implementation is what matters. And for me, it's incredibly important that our community can just pop onto this web page, have an easy ability to access the information and say, all right, well, council's done that, they haven't done that, and this is why they haven't done it. Because we know there will be things that pop up that mean that we can't implement an action for a particular reason. It's just the nature of projects, it's the nature of doing these types of things, and often there'll be third-party reasons, things that are outside of council control, and that is as it is. It's about that issue of transparency and for our community to know how we're tracking. So yeah, I hope councillors do see fit to support the motion, and it will be great to get this one endorsed.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack.
2040 needs to be seen as an amalgam of a number of plans. There are the 5 big headers, and tonight we'll be considering some other parts of the 2040 in terms of the thriving connectedness and so on, and the beauty of and how you maintain beauty of Moonee Valley. And so the green plan has been, as Councillor Marshall says, on the whole, very well received. It is an initiative to try to, as I said earlier, to bring together a whole lot of other plans, and for the green aspect of Moonee Valley to impact on how planning and how thinking goes across all of our municipality in whatever endeavour we're taking on board. So the response that we've got from the public is really gratifying to see in that whole concept and how that's come together. I think the criticisms and the ideas for improvement are really quite sound in most cases. And while we don't have a great deal of control over some of the aspects of federal state government activity, we can certainly, as a potential partner, a collaborator, and player in those things, attempt to either influence, advocate, or create ourselves as a model for doing things. I appreciate the critical issue that has been raised about the targets and greenhouse emission targets, and council would sincerely like to be able to take a critical role in pushing where those can be. But there's also some consideration about the limitations. But in terms of this plan, we're still prepared to take those on board. We're still prepared to look at those critically and analytically through a data-based approach and a scientific-based approach. So those issues will not be lost. They they will be built on and tackled in our planning over a period of time. I think the critical thing is that this plan, the same as the others, will undergo a review in the next 12 months. There's got to be a continuous fine-tuning and tweaking of these things because of changes that happen in funding bodies and the likes of that over time. And where we have successes in promoting our particular activities and demands in terms of advocacy will have influence on where we go to in the future as well. Some matters.
Councillor Cusack.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. I'm happy to give you an extension of time. I'm mindful you don't have a clock in front of you.
I'm only go for another couple of seconds. Thank you.
No problems.
But having said all that, we have now a plan that is based on good data, good feedback, supported very much by the community. And the common sense about it is that we will be able to add through these amendments to the motion, the original motion, be able to talk more specifically in a more time-defined period about when things will occur.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No? Okay, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? I'll just get everyone to leave their hands up. Councillor Gatchimarici, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Sorais, Councillor Syfek, and sorry, Councillor Lawrence's hand has gone up. So it is unanimous, but we got to read everyone's name anyway. Apologies for that, couldn't see everyone's hand. So that vote was unanimous. Okay, item 10.3 is the draft MV 2040 action plans, connected and beautiful. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gatchimarici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment at point E to say after table A, open bracket, but noting a quarterly allocation of up to $200,000, close bracket. And an additional point F, modify the draft MV 2040 action plan beautiful before being released for public comment to have the advocacy action only reference BMX as the example project, and that the wording of the note on designing play spaces changed to be clear that this is referencing all ability use of playgrounds and not misconstrued as simply access pathways.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchimarici. Is there a seconder for Councillor Gatchimarici's motion? Councillor Sorais. Councillor Gatchimarici, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will. The officer's report is fairly comprehensive. I'm not going to touch on the thriving grants because I know there's another councillor who has a particular interest in speaking to that item. But in terms of the connected and the beautiful action plans, These are, as you'll know, 1-year plans, and that's about allowing us to prioritise the recovery and capture our service delivery priorities for the coming year. That 1 year provides us some flexibility and adaptability, reflecting significant changes. In particular, some things that I thought were worth mentioning for us in our side of things. Connected is about being a connected city of accessible, active and sustainable transport. So some of the key items there look to continued advocacy to improve outcomes at the Keilor Road, Lincoln and Buller Road roundabout. That's an area that we continue to get significant feedback on, so that continued advocacy is in there. The LADAMs and Better Moves Around Schools programs, and the pieces around pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. In terms of beautiful, it's celebrating our identity, heritage and open spaces. So some of the initiatives there are around the Strathmore 20-minute neighbourhood, the Nursery Corner Master Plan. I know that will excite many of the Strathmore residents who continue to call and email us about that, so that's really exciting. But also things like street furniture, so pot plants, seats and bike racks. So it's about bringing people back to our areas, so bringing people back to shopping areas to help support them as things start to return to normal. There's a note in there around disc golf and orienteering, which we have heard about a couple of times from residents who are particularly interested, so that's in there to consider. The items that I mentioned in terms of the wording amendments, the one around the BMX track, there's certainly both the wetlands and the BMX are both separate considerations, and I just didn't want there to be any confusion. We know there has been a number of BMX riders in the wetlands, so I wanted to make sure we were clear that they weren't linking the wetlands with a potential BMX track. They're completely separate. And the play spaces item was particularly important. I get enough feedback to say that there's a difference between our play spaces being accessible and for people with any form of a disability to be able to interact with the play equipment in that play space with siblings. So for us to be able to consider all ability equipment in our playgrounds. The other important thing to note is that this is going out for online community consultation. So it will be open for a period of 2 weeks from tomorrow, and we certainly welcome your feedback on that. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor Gatchmerici. Councillor Soros.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll probably speak more in relation to the connected side of this motion. Councillor Gatchmerici has touched on a couple of the items that are listed to be put out for community consultation. Just a couple of other ones that I'd like to touch on, and that is about us advocating for the adjustment of platform height at the train stations to promote ease of access and safety, which probably should have been done to make a lot of our stations DDA compliant. The implementation, to deliver roads safety and pedestrian improvement in the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre, and I do understand that the impact consultation has been now completed, and now we're just waiting for a report from our officers so that we can consider that over the next 12 months, I've been advised. I think one of the most important things for me, and probably for the residents around the Rosehill ward, is that we're looking to continue to advocate for the railway station at Airport West as part of the future airport rail link. So I'm hoping that this advocating or advocacy continues and it gets stronger and stronger for the residents in our municipality that are very, very remiss of public transport. As far as the walking and cycling infrastructure, that's a great thing. We've got our Walk to Schools program, and I think that that's another fantastic option that we have to keep our community. I probably, like most of you, noticed that a lot more people are walking just to get out of the house, do this COVID environment that we're in, and it's great to see that, and the weather has been amazing, so it's been a great thing for all of us. I'd just like to mention though that the investigation of the level crossing removals at Park and Puckle Street will remain in the Moonee Valley 2040 book and report that's out. However, that may come after we've done our impact studies and everything else that's associated with that further down the track. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No? Okay. Councillor Lawrence. Sorry, I saw Councillor Lawrence's hand just.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't cover all those aspects that my fellow two councillors have already covered and covered them well, but I will talk to the issue of business and local business in particular, because it does get mentioned in this report, and it's paramount, in my opinion, to our recovery from the COVID-19 issues. We've had requests for over $2 million in grants, and we've only been able to fund 257,000 of those grants, which is barely 10%, maybe a bit over 10% of the actual demand. So it's 10% only. We're not doing, in my opinion, quite enough to support local business, local jobs and local community in that regard. I know it's not easy. We're only a council at the end of the day, but businesses are suffering terribly under this incredible pandemic. So what we can do more and how we do it is going to be something that's subject to this consultation process. But hopefully we can look at least doubling the amount that's listed in Table A for the 100,000. If we can front end that to 200,000 as a possibility, that would be really good, and it would increase our resources for local business and local jobs. So I can only say that that people are losing their businesses, they're losing their jobs, losing their sense of worth and confidence, and we really need this resource of helping them, supporting them, and seeing them through this tough period. So again, I have emphasised this before, but if we, as a community, can support our small local businesses in any way we can, please do. It's a great thing that you can do. You don't have to go far to do it, and please consider local businesses before you look, say, outside of the municipality. So we must respond better, be more realistic in what we do, and that meets the community and business expectations, which is what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor? Councillor Marshall.
Sorry, I realised I mustn't have had my hand up high enough before. Mayor, I'd actually like to move an amendment to this motion. So I would like, happy for me to read it out, and it sort of addresses the point that Councillor Lawrence was just making. That council officers undertake a review of proposed funded events to determine whether, in light of current and likely COVID-19 restrictions, funding should be reallocated to business, community group and artist support through the grants scheme.
Sorry, Councillor Marshall, I just realised that I was muted. Could you just read that out one
I'll
more
read it
time?
more slowly. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So that council officers undertake a review of proposed funded events to determine whether, in light of current and likely COVID-19 restrictions, funding should be reallocated to business, community group and artist support through the grant scheme.
Before that's seconded, can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yes.
Just before, did you would you also intend for ceremonies to be included in that event?
Yes, I certainly would, Councillor Sharp. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got that amendment as put forward from Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the amendment, please?
Look, I will to say that I very much endorse what Councillor Lawrence just said. We know that so many people in business are struggling. We know that there are various community groups struggling, and that obviously our artists, particularly who have fallen through so many gaps, are really finding it difficult. And we know that with the current restrictions and what the restrictions might be in the coming months, depending on what numbers do, that council otherwise would have undertaken a whole range of events, ceremonies, all of those things that we no longer will be. And so I think we need to do a really considered review of those and say, okay, should that be reallocated to supporting businesses, for example? Because I know many of our events are actually based around our business areas, our retail areas, and that's really important too. So I'm not at all diminishing that work and the value of that. But my concern is that if we don't support so many of the businesses, that there will be very few left to join in these celebrations. So for me, this is about saying at this point in time, where are our priorities? And that celebrating and bringing people to commercial centres will be incredibly important at a point in time. But if we're being totally pragmatic about it, the idea of having large-scale celebrations anytime in the foreseeable future, I think is actually difficult to contemplate. So for me, it's thinking, all right, well, let's think about what we could do with that money. This isn't about, I'm a really big supporter of events and celebrations. I think that they are part of what makes our community rich and vital. But at this point in time, it's about making sure that people survive. You know, we're in survival mode, and that is just the reality. And so let's be realistic about what we should be doing with our money, our budget, or ratepayers' money at this point in time. And that's just what this additional point is referring to.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak on just the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly wholeheartedly support Councillor Marshall for this alternative. Thank you for putting it up. I think this budget this year is like no other, and we need to be more proactively thinking about what will potentially happen at the end of all this, and recovery projects, which I know we've touched on in previous discussions. But yes, we have a lot of events over the year, each and every year pretty much, and they are, to some degree, you know, they're vital for our community, but considering where we are and where we may be in 6 months' time, none of us know. And at the moment, our businesses are really struggling. Mental health is a huge issue that I'm very, very passionate about. And I just really think that we need to do all that we can to help businesses and people generally in our community. And if we're not holding events and citizenship ceremonies, we haven't been able to do citizenship ceremonies. I just think in this year could be potentially just better use of those funds, and it's all about helping people and just making sure that the businesses are there at the end of all this. And if we're in the position where we can help that, then we certainly could and certainly should. But wholeheartedly support this alternative. Thank you very much for putting it up, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, more than happy to support this amendment. It was only about a month ago, on our 23rd or 24th of June meeting, that in moving the Fair Action Plan, we ensured we allocated a minimum of $50,000 to help support local artists, and I've been advised that it's that stream is going to go live soon, which is really exciting. And I think, like the past few months have shown that as an organisation, we have to constantly adapt to the changing world and changing environment around us. And I think this particular amendment is so important because we don't want to get to the end of this financial year, in June 2021 and go, oh, we've got all this money left over because we didn't do these 3 events, we didn't do these community activations, and then be thinking, in hindsight, how could we have spent this money better? By bringing this funding forward or looking at the money that would be allocated to events that, as Councillor Sharp has mentioned, are most likely not going to happen, then we can make sure that we give support to the whole range of different uses in the community, be it businesses who are really struggling, or community groups, sporting groups, local artists. It's just so important that us, as the tier of government that's closest to the people, that we are providing support to the people, our community. So I fully support, obviously, this amendment and ultimately, hopefully, the motion as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Gatchamarici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just really like to thank Councillor Marshall for bringing this forward. I think it's a fantastic amendment, so I'm really pleased to support it. Certainly we know that last lockdown there was a number of businesses who just managed to tread water and get through. Now that where we are at is a slightly different picture and we don't know what comes after this picture, really, there are so many of our businesses who are suffering differently this time, so many of our community groups who knew how to get through last time but don't know what the future looks like this time, and so many of those artists who managed to survive 6 weeks last time and this time don't know what the future looks like. So any way that we can possibly shift funds to things that help support our community, I'm really pleased by. And certainly I think about, if I was a ratepayer, what would I want my council to spend my money on? And I would want them to spend my money on supporting all of us together to get through this. This is about how we get through this as a community. And if it means that the businesses that we dearly love and the community groups who support us the rest of the time are still there in 6 months from now, and it's an event that we weren't going to run anyway, or that we wouldn't have run the way we normally did, so it doesn't need to occur, then that's a really, really responsive way for us to think about this. So I'm really pleased with the amendment. Thank you so much, Councillor Marshall, for bringing it up.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchamarici. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to endorse, obviously, the motion, but to ask councillors to reflect for a second that this is actually a proactive step in giving some direction to council around what it can do at its mid-year review of the budget. And that this is one example of where we can go to, and that there are probably many more in terms of thinking about how the shape of our dollar spend in our community will look coming December, January this in the future. The important thing here is that while we want to support our businesses, we're also got to be mindful still of the fact that so much is in flux and in change, and that many businesses are actually applying for money in order to be able to change their business and to be able to do that. And so our council needs to be investing its money into supporting businesses who need to be able to have some solidity behind them in what they currently do. I appreciate that, but also to be able to start thinking about how they can continue on in the future in a world where we're being told nothing much will be the same. So if we combine this smartness with some things like the webinars and so on like that, and start keeping that package together for all of business and making that work properly, and see how it comes can be an integrated affair. As Councillor Sharp pointed out, the health of people is as important here as it is about, and the mental health, pardon me, is about as important here as potentially putting a dollar on the stump. I'll just close off and say I've always been an advocate for increasing the dollars for in all of our public grant stuff, and I have said this over and over and over, and I have said over and over and over that for every dollar council spends, we get a multiplier effect of about $4 back into the community in terms of value. And this is one of those very, very important occasions where we need to be right into it. The situation has never changed. We should always be investing in our community to find out some of the solutions rather than it always being just totally in the lap of the tiers of government.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Lawrence?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. All councillors have spoken very well to this amendment, and I commend them all. I'll reiterate that this is a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, and it's hard to fathom that when you're right in the middle of it. But it's not something that comes along every day. It destroys businesses. It puts people, as Councillor Sharp pointed out, in a bad state of mind. It destroys confidence, and it does all those negative things to people who are just been working their butts off to build a business over who knows how long. And it's unfortunate. Moonee Valley City Council can survive without a Moonee Valley Festival for 1 year, would be my comment. But businesses will probably not survive if they don't get help and support, and that's really the crux of it to me anyway. We really have to get behind our local businesses and support them. So yes, I commend the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor on the amendment? No, so I will put the amendment from Councillor Marshall to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. So we'll now go back to the substantive, 10.3. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on the substantive?
Look, I will. Councillor Marici spoke well, so I won't repeat too much of what she said, but it's really important to keep in mind that they are 2 one-year plans, and again, focused on COVID recovery. The fair and green action plans were much further progressed before COVID-19 hit us, which is why that they have now got to the point of being able to be endorsed. And as noted, I think by Councillor Marici, the Thriving Plan will be presented at a later point in time. With the Connected, I'd certainly endorse what Councillor Saray said, the comments that she made in speaking about the Connected Action Plan. For me, what is really pleasing is the real focus on accessibility and both active and sustainable transport. So I hope that we have some success with the items in there over the next 12 months. And again, noting this goes on consultation, so please have your say. And if there's anything in there that you think isn't quite right or that should be done in the next 12 months, please do let us know. And the same with the Beautiful Action Plan, which is about creating a beautiful city, which again brings with it so many other benefits. So certainly, again, we'll look forward to reading the comments that people have to make about these plans.
Great, thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on the substantive motion before us? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Item 10.4 is the response to petition planning permit application with Heritage Victoria for subdivision of historic North Park Estate 45 to 69 and 71 Woodland Street, Essendon. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Marici. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Marici, would you like to speak on the motion?
I will, thank you. The officer's report is fairly self-explanatory. Obviously, the petition came to us earlier this year with over 7,000 signatures after the permit application was made in November 2019. As part of the Heritage Act processes, Heritage Victoria referred their application to the CEO of Moonee Valley for comments in January. And important to note, we're not a determining authority, so our referral was just advice to assist in their decision making, and we responded to that in March of this year, just so that residents know we did make a response to that in March of this year. Certainly the report articulates the differences between us responding to a petition about their views of the Heritage Victoria process. So I won't touch on that, but I would just like to obviously highlight the continued community interest in this matter. We certainly thank the community for their continued passion and interest and advocacy about this matter. So thank you for continuing to bring it to us. We appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gachmarici. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just to reiterate, without repeating too much of what Councillor Gachmarici has already mentioned, but yeah, look, the number of signatures is significant on this petition, over 7,000, and the community's interest and concern over the development at North Park Estate is certainly commendable and shows how important the North Park mansion and land surrounding it is to the Essendon and Strathmore area within Moonee Valley. North Park development would see over 110 mature trees and vegetation destroyed, which is a major number of trees in our municipality, as well as the construction of 27 townhouses. And this, I guess, is something that'll play on the minds of Heritage Victoria when they look at this. Of course, the magnificent mansion there, built in the 1890s by none other than Alexander McCracken from the Carlton United Breweries fame and past president of the Essendon Football Club, funnily enough. But I do commend the Save North Park group on their petition and support them in their fight to save North Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, just should confer with my fellow ward councillors with all that they've mentioned, and just to, I'd just like to thank the people who signed the petition and got behind the group. Obviously, this proposal and this site is very significant, and yeah.
Councillor Sharp, your sound has just dropped out.
Did you hear any of that?
We heard the start, so you're thanking the community group. I think got up to about there.
Okay, well, just to say thank you, concur with everything my fellow ward councillors have said. Obviously, the site is very significant, and I thank the Save North Park group for getting together and organising the petition. But yeah, the significance of this site and the building is certainly not one should not be diminished. And I guess we'll just have to see what happens in the future with that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Item 10.5 is the response to notice of motion report number 25-2019, naming of Canary Island date palms on Mount Alexander Road. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion to the officer's report. And that council resolves to A, note that the 143 Canary Island date palms and the land on which they sit are owned by the Department of Transport. B, proceed with the commemorative recognition of the Canary Island date palms by writing to Vic Roads and asking them to positively consider the matter. And C, refer the allocation of $8,000 per year for the purpose to the mid-year budget review for 2021 for future budgets.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak on your motion?
I would thank you, Madam Mayor. The Canary Island date palm plantation in Mount Alexander Road is the most magnificent plantings of Canary Island date palms in Australia. And I've never been to the Canary Islands, but they may even be more magnificent than what lies within those islands. I'm only surmising there. 143 evenly spaced date palms that create a gateway into the Moonee Valley City Council from the north of our city. We tend to take the plantation for granted, probably because we see it so frequently and don't really appreciate it enough, especially those who live in the Essendon and Strathmore areas. It's there every day, but it is just a magnificent plantation. It's an icon for Moonee Valley, just as Windy Hill, the Maribyrnong River, Puckle Street, Moonee Ponds, Essendon Airport, Moonee Valley Race Club. They're all icons of our municipality and they put us on the map. They're our recognition. And this is what brings me to the next point, and it's also recognition for me about the people who are often in our past been the significant people who have lived in Moonee Valley, worked in Moonee Valley, or contributed in some way significantly to our city, our state, or even our world in some cases. In Moonee Valley, we have the same icon and amazing people who have lived and worked and contributed to our society. Such amazing people such as Lionel Rose, a world champion boxer, Ruth Hollick, famous photographic artist, Steve Irwin, wildlife expert and conservationist, Joan Kerner, ex-Premier of Victoria, Hugh Ramsey, famous artist and painter, Dorothy Fullerton, first female councillor and first female mayor of the city of Essendon, our precursor to Moonee Valley, Hannah Clissold, pioneer farmer in Ascot Vale, farmed over 50 years in the Ascot Vale area in the early part of the 20th century. Major Pompey Elliott, World War I tactical commander of the 58th Regiment. Dick Reynolds, triple Brownlow medalist, four-time premiership player, captain of Essendon Football Club from 39 to 1950. Anna Kerrick, local landowner in Essendon in the 1920s. The list could go on, and it just points out to me that we've had so many significant people that have grown up or lived or worked within Moonee Valley that are deserving of recognition. So these are but a few of the names, and as I said, they've all had a strong connection with the city of Moonee Valley. It is this in mind that the report brings the amazing iconic gateway of the date palm plantation together with the great names of the people who have been in our community. By installing a recognition plaque, which is what this is all about, it's not a memorial plaque, I might add, it's a recognition plaque. Memorial plaques are for those that belong in cemeteries and the like. This is a recognition plaque under the Canary date palms. Each year it is proposed that 5 plaques be installed to recognise those important people. Permission will need to be, and a permit will need to be sourced from the Vic Roads and will be required, plus permission from the descendants of each of the persons being recognised. Obviously, if that permission isn't granted, then their names can't be used. This will be a wonderful way of creating an avenue of honour, combining it with our date palm plantation in the city of Moonee Valley. The $8,000 that's mentioned in the report is an operational budget item, and at this stage it's not in our budget and is to be reviewed at the mid-year budget review, which needs to be put to council at that time. This combines, as I said, the significance of the plantation with the significance of the people that have lived in Moonee Valley or worked in Moonee Valley. The initiative is creating a greater icon and attraction for Moonee Valley. I ask that council support this iconic aspect to our city and hope that you see fit to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support this motion for a couple of reasons, I guess, namely because point C refers the proposed budget allocation to the mid-year review for a further discussion. So I'm supportive of that basically because I could see this project as being a recovery project potentially, and after COVID or during COVID, whatever stage we're going to be up at that stage, we don't know. But I think based on the earlier discussion, our budget, I think this year needs to be fluid to a degree and adaptable. And I think having this conversation at mid-year when we're talking about a whole range of other issues, and I know it was mentioned in our budget adoption this year that a lot of our focus in the 2021 budget will be on recovery projects. Recovery projects can be incorporate a wide range of aspects, but it's all about making sure our community continues to be connected, making sure there was talk about improving streetscapes, improving business activity centres, a whole range of aspects. And that's why I believe this could certainly be, this idea could certainly be incorporated into that. And from memory, when this notice of motion was put up, maybe 6 or so months ago by Councillor Lawrence, it was unanimously supported. So I believe that there is, I think councillors believe that the idea was great. So if we could potentially take it further and have the conversation when appropriate, which is at mid-year, to see if it could be incorporated as a recovery project, I think it'd be very beneficial to have that discussion, and happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, I think at the time 6 months ago, I was very supportive of the idea. The difficulty is that we are where we are, and if you look at the back of the envelope calculation, over the course of this project at this stage, we'd be looking at over $170,000. Now, with what Councillor Gauci-Marici said earlier, that's basically at the moment, with my decision making, everything is through the prism of what would our community think about this expenditure. And for me, I don't think that they would be supportive of it. I think they would be supportive of the idea in different times. And I certainly am too. But at this point in time, to say to our community, look, we're going to be through that budget process. This has been flagged, and I just don't think it would be something that would be supported at this point in time. I'd be happy to say to Vic Roads, look, they run a whole range of different grants processes. Can we work with you to get some type of grant, not acknowledging that it is their land to control? So that's the path that I would feel more comfortable going down at this stage. But given the circumstances we're in, I just don't feel that it's something that I can flag at this point of time as being supportive of $170,000. And it'll be more. Again, we know how quickly costs escalate. So for me, that's the issue. I just can't in good conscience, when I could think about the whole range of other things that we could do with that money, can't support council funding this or looking at funding it. So that's where I sit. And as I said, in principle, I support the idea. I supported it last time, so I've got no issue with that at all. It's just that funding mechanism, and I'd much rather be saying to Vic Roads, look, can we look at getting some sort of grant process happening? And I was very pleased too to see that Frank Little was not mentioned this time, because I can say one thing, that there is not a snowball's chance in hell that I would ever support a plaque to commemorate, to do anything in relation to that person who deserves no recognition whatsoever. So that's where I sit. As I said, the idea in principle I'm supportive of. It's just that at this point in time, with all of the needs, with governments across the world facing large deficits, with so many demands on councils, this falls into the want rather than the need, and that's where I'm sitting.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Just to confirm, were you foreshadowing a motion there? With writing to, you didn't mention foreshadowing, but you mentioned.
No, I didn't
that you
mention
had
foreshadowing. Look, I'm happy. I'll listen to what other councillors have got to say, and if other councillors are inclined to go down that path of supporting the officer's recommendation, perhaps with an additional point saying that seek funding through any Vic Roads community grants process, I'd foreshadow that then.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Gauchemarici.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Certainly for me, this is a particularly difficult one. I certainly see the principle of what the original notice of motion is trying to achieve, and I certainly think that we are holistically supportive of recognition there. Similarly, I completely understand the concerns around what our budget might want to need over the next 12 months and where we're at with that. On balance, I'm happy to support Councillor Lawrence's motion because it's a decision we will consider in January. It's referred for consideration in January. And if we have other grant streams available to us in January, we can incorporate that in our considerations in January. My view of the mid-year budget review is we take all those things into account. Certainly, for me, January will be a real consideration around, is that $8,000 that would be better spent on plaques, or $8,000 that would be better spent on funding something within a particular business area, or funding something really specific as a recovery item. So for me, I'm not predetermining what my outcome in January will be, but I'm happy to refer it to January for consideration. So.
Thank you, Councillor Gauchemarici. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Cusack.
Well, I voted back in when it was put up as a motion to support this because I wanted to see what the officer's report was. My concern is that we have a brilliant group of the Canary Island palms are a wonderful planting dating from 1929. They commemorate a very, very particular part of our municipality and its history, and they stand on their own as a lovely, lovely testament to what Moonee Valley, Essendon's about and its history. I'm not so sure that it's a very clever idea to hook all sorts of famous people's names to those palms. I think that in terms of recognition of people's places in the municipality, we would be much better off recognising those people where they were and where the places were that they actually influenced and the things that they did in certain places. So if somebody came from Ascot Vale, it would be better to have the community in Ascot Vale know about what that person did and all the rest of it. If somebody ran a boxing gym and where Lionel Rose trained and so on like that, why couldn't we recognise where that place was? And so this is something that happens all across the world. And in fact, places are named with little plaques and things like that, and local histories come alive, and they can be run and managed by our council in a really wonderful collaborative process between artists, between historians, between schools, between all sorts of other service clubs and the likes of that. And we could actually start to have a serious look at how we name our burbs, how we name our streets, how we name our places, and how we feel about them. If we put it all in one basket and lob it into the middle of Mount Alexander Road around those beautiful Canary Island date palms, how many people are actually going to see them? And when somebody actually does go and stand next to a plaque in the middle of the median strip next to a Canary Island date palm, are they really going to be transported back to the place where somebody did something or grew up somewhere and get the meaning of that? Whereas the locals in an area can say, well, listen, you know, just around the corner from here, somebody lived here who was really important, and we can tell our kids about that story and that history. I'd sooner spend the money and the effort in that, and I think that that would be a greater reflection for our whole community on what our whole community does and its history, its past, and what it would like to celebrate into the future. My biggest concern, of course, is what happens if one of the palms were to fall over or be diseased or die. What would happen to the plaques then?
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. So obviously this motion differs from what's in the meeting papers, and it's most of us, it's our first chance to have a look at this proposed motion. My query or concerns here would be that the actual report makes some very valid points in regards to Council's place naming and civic recognition special committee, the naming rules for places in Victoria and the statutory requirements, the governance framework that's required under the Geographic Place Names Act, the principle of naming rules, and over 19 points obviously spells out processes and why the officer who wrote the report had that recommendation that note the issues which have been raised in the report, including the issue of public safety and access. Now, the actual motion before us doesn't have any reference to the report. So my concern in supporting this motion, it doesn't reference the report. It doesn't therefore outline the method as to how these would be named, whether or not they would go via Council's place naming and civic recognition policy. So it just doesn't sit comfortably with me that those really valid points that the officer has raised in the original report aren't being referenced or taken into consideration at all in the motion. Obviously, when a report a month ago or so in regards to the heritage street signs, that was a process that would be referred through all the relevant governance frameworks that exist both within council and statewide. So for me, whether or not it's a valid spend of money, I do have concerns, particularly given that the report does mention every single time we go to Vic Roads, we have to be lodging a new permit with them for everything from traffic management to signing a memorandum of understanding, and those costs will escalate quite a bit as opposed or on top of the actual physical cost of the plaque. But it's the processes that has me a little bit concerned, because as that motion doesn't capture any of that report, I'm concerned that it's not the best way to move forward with this relevant or with this specific proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, Councillor Lawrence, you have a right of reply.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It's $8,000 for 5 plaques, not the other quoted figures that were mentioned.
Sorry,
It's
just as a point of clarification, Mayor, can I ask that the total figure for the installation of the plaques, which is the figure obviously that it would cost, assuming you're going to go through the project, that's not $8,000, is it? It's over $170,000. I'm presuming officers would be able to confirm that.
If I can continue, Madam Mayor, it'll be over 30 years.
Sorry, I was for a point of clarification.
If I can just finish,
officers.
thank you, Councillor Marshall.
Apologies, sorry, I didn't realise I was on mute, councillors. Councillor Lawrence, we do have a point of clarification that needs to be answered. So, Councillor Marshall, just to confirm, your point of clarification was over the life cycle of this project, what the final cost was. I'm not sure if our CEO, Brian Lancaster, is online, if you could confirm the cost.
Could we also confirm over what period that cost will be?
Yep. And
Sorry, I've got a point of clarification. That's if someone else wants to
Yes.
raise another point of clarification.
Yep,
it's a
we're
matter for
just
them.
waiting for an officer. Obviously, we are on Zoom, so we're just waiting for an officer to respond. They might just be looking this up. Thank you, CEO Brian Lancaster.
Yeah, I understand that's an operational cost, the $8,000, but there is an installation cost, so it is a significant cost, more so than just $8,000 initial cost.
So I think the question was over the, sorry, Councillor Marshall, you wanted to know the final figures over the
Officers,
span
yeah.
of the project. We don't have that in the report, I don't believe. But Brian,
I
sorry,
don't
Mr.
have that
Lancaster.
figure at hand at the moment, Mayor, but it is substantial, yes. There's certainly an ongoing cost about that, so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marshall, is that, I know it's not specific details, but does that answer your point of clarification?
Well, I mean, obviously, I just did a simple calculation of the $1,200 in there by the number of plaques proposed to come at my figure, but that actually didn't include the additional operational costs. So yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lancaster, and thank you, Councillor Marshall. Hopefully that answers your point of clarification. Councillor Lawrence, if you could please continue.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I did speak to the report writer today in relation to those costs, and it does include the installation cost as well as the plaques and so forth. So I'm not sure where the mention from the CEO that doesn't include installation, but I was told otherwise. Yes, so it's $8,000 for 5 plaques, as I've pointed out, and magnificent recognition of our local people that have contributed so much to the foundation of Moonee Valley over a long period of time. Such people as Steve Irwin, Joan Kerner, these were great local people that grew up in Moonee Valley, attended schools in Moonee Valley, and went on to far greater things in life. So that's the point of what we're trying to work with here. $8,000 seems maybe a lot, but 20 million on the Flemington Hub, 53 million on the East Keilor Leisure Centre. It's a small price that we're talking about here. It's not 20+ million that we're spending down at Flemington. It's only a small amount in the Buckley ward, and I'm sure the people of Essendon and Strathmore would not be begrudging it too much. It's difficult to find where each person, taking a point, I think, of one of the councillors, actually lived and grew up 100 years ago in some cases. So putting something in significant place is going to be difficult to source and to find exactly what their geographic location is. So I would say that that's not such a sensible idea, and that this is the way we can combine the significance of the Canary date palm plantation with the significance of recognising great people from our past. Finally, as I said, it is about recognition, but it's also an icon for our city. Moonee Valley is a great city, and here's a chance to bring together 2 great icons, the people and the Canary date farm, and put them together in something that's significant. The community feedback that I've had has been nothing but positive about this. It's been really keen to get something happening, see something that's innovative, that we're looking forward to within the municipality. As I said, it's not a done deal. It needs to go to the mid-year budget review, and if it means at that point that we come back and say, look, we don't have the funds at the moment, let's look at it in the following budget, then fine, that's a great way to look at it. And I, for one, would not begrudge that. But at least let's put it on the table. Let's not dismiss it just out of hand because it doesn't fit with certain schedules. Let's just look at it in the cold hard light of day and say it's a great innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. And just to be crystal clear before I put this to the vote, was there a foreshadow motion? There was no foreshadow motion? No? Councillor, sorry, Councillor.
I thought I'd indicated a foreshadow,
Yes,
so apologies if I wasn't clear. No.
Nina, just make that crystal. Thank you. So I will put Councillor Lawrence's motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sarace, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Sypek. All those against? Councillor Gatchimarici, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Marshall. So that motion is lost. Councillor Marshall, your foreshadowed motion, please.
Yes, so I'll move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation, but with a couple of additional points. So A and B can be the same. C can write to Vic Roads as it is, including asking if there are any grant opportunities through Vic Roads. And then D, to address the concerns raised by some councillors about that safety and other issue, which I think is actually really quite important, give further consideration to the safety and other issues raised in this report.
Okay, apologies, Councillor Marshall, just because I was just pulling up on the screen. We're all working off multiple devices, just so make sure everyone's on the same page. So could you just, so A and B were the same, is that correct?
Yep.
Yep, and then could you please repeat the last bit, just so we're all clear?
See, I just made that bit up, so hopefully I say the same thing as I said last time. Someone will tell me if I didn't.
Okay, well, let's write
it as
it
in,
down.
Yep, under the roadside memorials policy and request of Vic Roads whether there are any grant opportunities to fund the project. And then D will be give further consideration to the safety and other issues raised in this report and the appropriateness of the location and receive a further report at a future ordinary council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marshall. I'm sure governance will be writing that up in the background. All councillors, can I just get a general nod if everyone's clear on what we're voting on?
No, can you please repeat it, please?
Yep, Councillor Marshall.
I'll just point, just that last point that was.
Yeah, no worries. Yep.
Yeah,
Point D.
So D, yeah, it's a new D. Give further consideration to the safety and other issues raised in this report and the appropriateness of the location and receive a further report at a future ordinary council meeting.
That was dot point D. Everyone clear on the new motion?
Can I please ask a point of clarification? I thought you said A and B and C were the same as the officer's recommendation.
No, A and B is the same.
Yeah.
C has the addition of basically requesting Vic Roads to see whether there are any grant opportunities to fund the project.
Yep, okay. But in D, you refer to the safety again, even though that's in point B?
So in point B, we're noting those issues. In point D, we're asking for a further consideration of those issues and a report back to see whether they can be overcome, essentially.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to members of the public who are watching at the moment. Obviously, normally we would sit in our council chamber and we would have a big screen in front of us, but we don't have that luxury at the moment. So we just need to make sure that everyone knows exactly what we are voting on. So is everyone clear on what Councillor Marshall's motion is? Yes, I'm seeing nods. So Councillor Marshall, you have moved that. I need a seconder for your motion. Councillor Gatchimarici. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on your motion?
I will. I don't want to repeat what I've said. Obviously, I've got significant concerns around the appropriateness of the expenditure of this money, which by the time you add up the individual cost for particular plaques, the additional costs associated, as Councillor Nation has indicated, with permitting, with legals, with the maintenance, all that sort of stuff, it will be a significant sum of money. And that's okay, because again, as Councillor Lawrence has indicated, we spend significant amounts of money on all types of things. And that's, you know, that sometimes things cost what they cost. The concern is at this point in time, is this an expenditure which I think our community would be supportive of? if things change and there is a marvellous economic recovery and grants are flying everywhere, you know, in 12, 18, 2 years' time, then maybe I'd have a different view. But we've got to deal with the circumstances at the point of time in which we're in. This is where you sometimes forget how valuable debate is, because Councillor Nation and Councillor Cusack both raised really important points that hadn't been the focus of my concerns, but are incredibly important. And those safety issues, we don't want something which is either creates a safety hazard and potentially, you know, someone ends up getting injured because of those particular safety circumstances, or we don't, you know, that point about the plaques and history and the importance of citing, I think from Councillor Cusack is really, it is important, because it's fine to have a plaque about someone, but it is so much more valuable in my view if you can link it to where they lived, where they did their important stuff. That I think is a very important project. So it may be that you say, okay, well, of these various plaques that you might have one every second, I don't know, there could be a whole range of things that you decide upon as part of further consideration on this. So look, as I said, thank you for the comments that were raised in debate, because they are really very important. And let's see if Vic Roads will consider it, because we might go to them and they might say no. And we've had all this wonderful debate, and that's great, but I think we really need to go to them, get some really clear idea. Is this something that would be likely to be supported? And you've got a whole range of grant schemes that you run. Can we link in with one of those? And again, though, but we really need this report back to give further consideration to those safety issues. We're mindful around that area. There are existing safety concerns, and we certainly don't want to, as a council, do anything to exacerbate those. So they are threshold issues, and again, thanks councillors for raising those in the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Gatchmarici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be fairly brief. I think just to echo the comment around the importance of debate, I obviously had indicated I was supportive of Councillor Lawrence's motion. For me, the real turning point is if there is a real lack of clarity about the financial figures listed in the report, compared to what some people think it is, compared to what other people think it is. For me, there's not clarity. And I just want for us all to be really clear and on the same page about what the actual cost is for installation, the ongoing costs, and the impacts on operational teams and what they do. I think importantly, the motion still asks Vic Roads to positively consider it, and this is still something that I think could be delivered maybe potentially slightly different to accommodate the safety concerns. Maybe there are some sections, not others, that could have plaques, because certainly I would hate to see people wandering across road reserves next to trams if that was going to be actively encouraging people into hazardous situations. So certainly I would hope that further report would consider things that may or may not be possible around that. And I'm happy to support the alternate that still asks Vic Roads to positively consider naming the date palms, and also to think about different funding sources so that we still achieve the best of both worlds in theory. We still hopefully get some named and we still get some funding for it from an external source, still achieving the desired outcome just in a different way. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchmarici. Councillor Sorais.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just in regards to the new motion that Councillor Marshall has put up, I see a bit of a conflict in it. Item C that says request of Vic Roads whether there are any grant opportunities to fund this project. And then in item D, we're saying that we give further consideration to the safety and other issues raised in the report and the appropriateness of the location, and receive a further report at a future ordinary council meeting. So if we're perhaps considering and looking at a different location for the proposed plaques, why then would we be requesting funds or grant opportunities to Vic Roads? It sort of kind of counteracts one from the other. We're either going to pursue getting grants and funds for the palm trees along Mount Alexander Road, or are we going to look at alternative places to put these? My personal view, and I've listened to everyone else's comments for what it's worth, I know that we have plaques along the Maribyrnong River of war heroes and veterans and people that been significant contribution to our society. And that is for everyone to be able to see and share. If they were scattered around the municipality, in my view, I feel they'd be lost. I think having all of these plaques along that one area is a significant opportunity for everyone to see and everyone to enjoy. And I think it links in with people from all different backgrounds that have been quite well known throughout our municipality as well. That's just my 2 bob worth for what it's worth. So I just wanted to maybe get some clarification from Councillor Marshall as to whether or not I'm reading this differently, or whether or not we approach Vic Roads for some grant, and if that isn't suitable, then we look at other locations. I'm not quite sure.
So, Councillor Soros, you're asking a point of clarification?
Yeah, just, yep.
Councillor Marshall, is that point of clarification clear enough for you to respond to?
It is.
Yep.
So yeah, probably in my drafting, I haven't been as clear as I would have liked to have been. Make it up on the spot.
Caught on the run.
Exactly. But I would see it working that officers would be considering those, issues of concern as per para D, write to Vic Roads and say, this is what we're proposing. Do you have grants that might be available for this? And they'll either do a yes or no for that. And then probably there'd be further discussions with Vic Roads. But I think they're not probably drafted as precisely as I'd like, but I think that it's manageable in that they can run concurrently. Could be contacting Vic Roads saying this is a motion that's been at council. Look, there are some issues to work through, but we'd like to proceed with this. Are there funding streams available? And then we'll have the report back that will just finesse stuff. And like Councillor Gauchi-Marici said, it might be something that ends up being slightly different to originally anticipated. But that
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
And just one other thing.
Marshall, sorry, Councillor Spice, did that answer your first point of
Yes.
clarification? Yep.
Yep.
And you have another point of clarification?
No point of clarification, but just in discussions about costs and things that were raised earlier. In my view, I think that this is we're in pretty sad times, and if something nice was to come about, I don't see spending that kind of money, considering when we look at what we expend on VCAT applications and representatives from different areas and consultants that we engage and everything. To me, in the big scheme of the financial picture, I don't believe it's a huge amount, and I think it's going to give pleasure and recognition to a lot of people that have contributed to our municipality. Just wanted to finish with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Soros. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sypek, your sound doesn't seem to be working. Yep, that's sounding a bit better.
Better? Yep. Madam Mayor, I've heard the arguments for and against for this argument, and I don't think we're very much worlds apart, except for maybe a bit of monetary value here. And from what I heard, I'm pretty crystal clear on how much this project's going to cost. Councillor Marshall and Councillor Lawrence gave us an initial figure of 5 plaques and the total project costs. So for me, overall, the project cost I don't think is a significant amount, but I'm happy to support Councillor Marshall's, even though I supported Councillor Lawrence's previous motion, I'm happy to support Councillor Marshall's motion to further investigate this. What I've been hearing, there is nobody's saying no to these plaques. Everyone's saying, look, it's a good idea, but the timing might be wrong and maybe the money situation might not be right. So I'm happy to support this alternative motion that we still keep this project alive. Whether it's delayed a little bit, I'm happy for that. But for me, the amount of finance is pretty crystal clear to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, as disappointed as I am that councillors have not seen fit to originally support this, the report is still in the form that it was. That has not altered, and you cannot alter that as it is. The the overall impact of what this alternative is offering is probably not a great deal different to the overall situation that I was offering previously. But anyway, councillors see things differently. As was mentioned by Councillor Deputy Mayor Sypek, that there isn't a great deal of cost in this. It's a small amount in comparison to a lot of things that we do on council. These aren't times to be flippant with money, and I agree wholeheartedly with that comment. And I, for one, have not said that it's in the budget, that has to be reviewed at the mid-year budget review. And if that comes around and we find ourselves not in the position or even feeling confident to spend dollars on this at this point in time, then it can be delayed, and that's okay. That's not the thing. And the emphasis here is to at least put the project on the table, as Councillor Sypek mentioned, and to have it up and running, and to be an initiative that this council can be proud of. And if we see it any other way, then I think we're just grandstanding over stuff that's not really relevant. No, I even in my disappointment, I will probably still support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak on this? Councillor Nation.
Only to say that I support this motion, and as one of our 18 viewers, Mr. Doc Faraday, says, too much time spent on plaques. So as Doc says, let's move on to the next item.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor? Sorry, Councillor Nation, there is someone else who wants to speak, so I will pass on to Councillor Cusack.
I mentioned before in the previous debate what my serious concerns were about creating these plaques around the Canary Island date palms, and that we have a broader history in this municipality where we should be recognising people and where they come from. I'm rather distressed in the last few minutes, though, to listen to comments by Councillor Serace and Councillor Lawrence in respect of their debate, when I heard from Councillor Serace say that, well, we spend money on VCAT decisions. Well, the reality on going to VCAT, the reality is that we're actually fighting for people's rights there, and the capacity for a community to have something very, very important that is about their life and their amenity and their lifestyle. And I'm not sure that suggesting that, just because we spend $20 million potentially on a hub at Flemington is not, how does that possibly equate to putting some plaques around some date palms? The importance of that hub is much, much, much more so than anything else. And I really abhor the flippancy of that line and the ill-considered parallel that was drawn there. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to support this motion. I think it's actually one that is, as Councillor Lawrence said, only to benefit people from Essendon and Strathmore. Well, it's a shared history. There are 13 neighbourhoods, as Moonee Valley 2040 tells us. And if you happen to come from anywhere outside of Essendon and Strathmore, in this case, you're not being given a look in. I'm not happy.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No. Would any other councillor like to speak? No. Councillor Marshall, yes, you can close.
Thank you. I don't want to annoy Doc, but Doc, I've just got to say, Jim, I think Councillor Cusack, the addition of that point D was to address your particular concern about location. And so I would expect that as part of a report back, that specific point would be addressed. And it might be that you say, well, okay, here, this section is appropriate for these particular people, but Having reflected on this, it's a lovely idea. Let's think about how we commemorate other people in Ascot Vale, Flemington, Moonee Ponds. You know, I don't want to name every suburb. I won't go into Rosehill in case I leave anyone out. But acknowledging the point that you've just made. So, because I certainly think that location of where an individual grows up or is born or does their special thing is, it is actually quite important. So I would expect the report to address that too. So that's probably all I need to say, Mayor, and I'll finish there.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Gatchmerici, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Soros, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Sypek. All those against? That is Councillor Cusack. That motion is carried. And for those of you who are playing along at home, I read out the names in the order that they come up on my Zoom screen. It's definitely not alphabetical order. My mind doesn't work quick enough to put people in that order. So apologies for the very unusual order. Okay, so we are now up to item 10.6, which is the proposed sublease to Ascot Vale Kindergarten Inc. for Railway Lot 4 at Ascot Vale. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Yes, happy to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall, and a seconder. Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on the motion?
Just briefly, Ascot Kinder, as I think everyone's aware, sits on a site that's actually owned by Victrac and has been a kinder that's been around for many a year. Council leases the site and then sublets it to the kinder, and we've just been waiting for Victrac to get back to us to consent to these arrangements for a new lease. So now this is basically what we're proposing to do, to enter into a 5-year arrangement from the 1st of the 3rd, 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. I note that the actual lease is now on a new community subsidised rent, and that the Victrac have agreed to Council's request in that space. And I suppose I just acknowledging the fact that in the report, as it says, this has been operating as a kindergarten since 1946 and is well used by the local community. So I would hate to see a vote go any other way other than to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor? I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Rightio. Item 10.7 is the Councillor Expenses Report Q3 2019-20. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Soros.
I just move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Soros. And a seconder? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Soros, would you like to speak on the item?
No, this is just procedural. It just shows the council expenditure for the period of 1st of January 2020 to the 31st of March 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Soros. Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. No, I think Councillor Soros has covered it very well. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Now, the next item of business is notices of motion, and we do have one tonight. So item 11.1 on the agenda is notice of motion number 2020-13, Heritage Properties and Demolition by Neglect. I call on Councillor Marshall to present her notice of motion.
Thank you. I'd like to move that Council request the Chief Executive Officer to bring a report or reports back to an ordinary council meeting as soon as practicable, outlining how council can address the issue of demolition by neglect of heritage properties, with reference to the demolition by neglect report and model law produced by the National Trust, and including through changes to A, Council's local laws, and B, Council's planning scheme, including whether this issue can be addressed through the current planning scheme amendment C200 Moon, and 2, put a motion to the next MAV state conference requesting the planning minister implement changes at the state level to address this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that notice of motion? Councillor Cusack. Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak on your nom?
Thank you. Look, firstly, I would like to acknowledge Moonee Valley Heritage Action, who contacted me about this issue and also brought the demolition by neglect report to my attention. It's one of the real challenges we have where we have heritage controls in place for significant or contributory properties, and they provide limits usually around demolition. And what we do see happen is that we have people who might have land banked or who otherwise might want to develop a particular property, knock it down, and put in their application for 5 townhouses or a 3-storey apartment block or whatever it might be, that they deliberately run down the property. They neglect it to the point where by the time they put in a demolition request, the condition of the property is really destroyed and the heritage integrity is reduced to virtually nothing. And it's really frustrating as a council group, as a community, where you go through these lengthy heritage processes, and we know they're lengthy. And through those processes, people have numerous opportunities to have their say about a particular property, including whether they think it should be included with an overlay, they're contributory, non-contributory. So they have their opportunity at that stage to address issues of concern. And we go through all of that process, we get the controls in place, and then we have developers usually who try and have this workaround to try and be able to knock down the property. I'm sure most of us sitting around here can think of properties in this exact situation. You'd hope that most people who buy heritage properties, they do so because they love the character, they love that beauty, that sense of history that comes with owning these types of properties. It have been part of a neighbourhood that has heritage characteristics, and certainly that was something that was at the forefront of my mind when we were looking at it, buying our house. So we really need to disincentivise people who just want a land bank and who want to acquire a heritage property simply to run it down with the intention of knocking it down directly or indirectly. And my view is you should look elsewhere if that's your intention, but we need to be able to have those back-end controls to help back us up when we've gotten through that process. So as noted, this motion calls for a report back to consider the options that are available to deal with this issue. And the demolition by neglect report really contains some interesting reading, so it's worthwhile, if this is an area of interest to you, to have a look at that. And also ranges a range of different options, whether through local laws or the planning scheme, to actually address the issue. And also in point 2, it calls for us to put a motion to the MAV State Conference, because like so many areas of planning, ideally this would be something that would be best resolved by changes at the state planning level, rather than having to put it into the hands of individual councils. So I hope that councillors will see fit to support it and to put it on the radar of the planning minister, and really then perhaps some good advocacy behind that.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor. This motion is absolutely vital. To think that there are people, and we know that there are, either people or businesses, who are making decisions to undermine the hard work of the community and the hard work of this council and the efforts of so many others in getting around our heritage work. The efforts that have been made and the money expended by ratepayers to protect their communities, protect their areas and so on like that through heritage controls needs to be respected. The notion of putting in controls, as Councillor Marshall has said, to stop this process happening is critical. And of course, the motion then talks about the most logical thing to do is to take it up through the MAV to seek the Minister's support for a wide-ranging review of controls and legislation in that space. I think the the example that we've had and that's been played out across all of Melbourne on the front pages of the paper is the example of the Corkman Hotel, where people came in at the dead of the night and knocked over the pub. Now, this is more by stealth and over a long period of time. But what you're seeing is local amenity affected by things that people expect council to make a place, once it's considered heritage, make it safe. But you can't make it safe while there are people with intentions who have intentions to do anything but make a place safe and make it count for our community for now and into the long term. So this is an important motion. I commend it to everybody, and I hope that we carry it through, and taking it to the MAV, as I said, is a really important step in this process.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. Certainly very happy to support this recommendation. We need to do all that we can to protect the heritage that we have in across Moonee Valley. So thank you, Councillor Marshall, for putting up this notice of motion. As the MAV representative, I'm certainly very happy to take this to the next State Council meeting, whenever that may be, but certainly happy to progress that through that avenue. Absolutely, certainly. So, and I'm sure we'll have support too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Any other councillor on this motion? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, so that's all the notices of motion for tonight. Now, item 12 on the agenda is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business for tonight? Silence? No? And what about item 13, delegates report? Would anyone like to report anything in their role as delegate? Nope. Now, we don't have any confidential reports tonight, so it does bring us to the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone who was tuning in at home. Hopefully you enjoyed the meeting, and we will see everyone in a fortnight's time. Thank you very much. Bye.